Thank you, sir. Jillian's got more.
Joining us now for more reaction, President Trump's personal attorney and senior legal advisor to his campaign, Jenna Ellis. Jenna, so we all know, us being, ordinary Americans, non-government employees, that this is something had been coming down the pike for a while, the pardoning of Roger Stone. Is it something the president gave serious thought to, and is it something that was widely debated and discussed, or did the president know from the get-go this was a commutation he was going to make?
Yeah, well, it is a commutation, not a pardon. And obviously, I'm not going to get into the internal deliberations, but I think that the timing does speak for itself, where, this was just days before Roger Stone was supposed to report to federal prison. And the judge in this instance could have and should have granted a new trial based on everything that we know about the lack of due process in that case. And so with Robert Mueller coming out with this op-ed, it just further shows proof for anyone reasonable and objective watching that this was a political target that was designed to target President Trump's allies for process crimes and due process that was just absolutely absurd. And so President Trump putting out this commutation, I think, was not only constitutional and proper, but it's in keeping with the power pardon of the president in the Constitution that provides that the president is the last full guardian of genuine justice. And Roger Stone absolutely deserved the justice.
Jenna, the question, though, was there an internal deliberation, or was this a decision President Trump made on his own? And did he make alternate considerations? Did he hear debate from both sides of the argument here, or was he very convinced that this is a commutation he was going to make from day one?
Well, I did answer that, Jillian, and I said that I'm not going to get into the internal deliberations. Of course, as a personal attorney to the president, those conversations are absolutely privileged. And so what I will tell you is that the timing does speak for itself. And this particular commutation was absolutely constitutional. It was justified. And the American people, looking at what happened to Roger Stone, looking at what happened in the Mueller investigation, and now with this op-ed with Robert Mueller, as a prosecutor, he should be completely disinterested in this particular commutation. It's absolutely irresponsible to come out and have to justify his prosecution with the separation that should be here in this instance. And so he should have just remained quiet and allowed the commutation to proceed. Roger Stone being a 67-year-old man with underlying health conditions, for a medical commutation even with the whole COVID-19 situation, you have people who are violent criminals that are being released in California and other states. And yet, the leftists wants to pretend, and the Democrats want to pretend that somehow, this is some kind of a big deal. It's just simply not.
Can you tell us if there was anybody who presented to President Trump an argument at any point for not commuting the sentence of Roger Stone?
Again, those individuals would have to speak for themselves, and all of those internal communications are privileged, and that's something that, as his attorney, I'm not going to get into. But the Constitution does provide in Article 2 that it's the president, regardless of what advice either way is given, whether it's advice against it, it's advice for a full pardon, it's advice for exactly what he did. It's ultimately the president's decision with all of the information to make that call, and it's my firm belief that he did absolutely make the right call here. And for people like Nancy Pelosi who are saying...
you just mentioned a pardon. Did the president consider pardoning him at any point?
You'd have to ask that to the president. And I know you keep asking me this question, but again, that's attorney-client privilege. And what I will say is that the Constitution speaks for itself. The president made his decision here. It was absolutely correct. And for Nancy Pelosi and Democrats to think that somehow through legislation they can amend unilaterally the Constitution, she really needs to read the Constitution and realize the limitations of the separation of powers here.
Jenna, just so you know, before we wrap here, I'm asking you the question because we invited you on the show today to hopefully get some more information from you, not to just have you knock on Democrats and Nancy Pelosi. We were hoping that you could provide some perspective on this. We appreciate your time.
Hopefully I did
Jenna.
provide some perspective constitutionally. Thanks.
Chris Wallace talks to Education Secretary Betsy DeVos.